thank you, Barry and Memorial United Methodist Church, for hosting us today. We're going to get some sound stuff set up real quick. How many of you ever listen to Weekly Witness on Mondays? Excellent. For those who didn't raise your hand, my name is Scott and I'm the Outreach Director for Texas Impact. And every Monday at noon, or most Mondays at noon, we have a live broadcast out of Austin where we talk about how people of faith can engage in the public policy process and have various speakers from the policy and faith realms. So you can come to Austin. Well, not so much anymore, but it's mostly listened to by podcast. It's available by YouTube Live. And we encourage y'all to check out that podcast, Texas Impact Weekly Witness. So tomorrow, since we're here today and we're going to do an end of summer road trip with the Texas Impact staff taking a field trip, the audio from this panel, following panel, is going to be used for the Weekly Witness podcast. So go ahead and download all of them, but y'all can skip tomorrow's unless you just want to re-listen to what you're hearing today. So first of all, thank y'all for being here. Are y'all excited? Yes. Excellent. So real quick before we jump in, agenda for today. The first 45 minutes, we're going to have a faith panel talking about why, from a faith perspective, we should engage in the policy process. The second panel today will be a policy panel where we talk about things you should know before you go meet with your members of Congress. Then we're going to take a break. We're going to come back for downstairs for an Advocacy 101 training, and then we're going to have you all get together by congressional visits or by congressional districts to prepare to make some visits together. So is that clear? All right, and the purpose of all of this is to get you ready to make congressional visits in August. Are you all committed and ready to do that? Excellent. Well, let's get started in the podcast. We'll get going. Hey, friends, and welcome to the Texas Impact Interfaith Advocacy Training here at Barry Memorial United Methodist Church. My name is Scott Adams, Texas Impact's Outreach Director, and I am so excited to be with you all this afternoon to begin our journey towards making some successful congressional visits in August. Who's ready to do that? Yes. All right, there are more people than that. Let's try that again. Who's ready to do that? So I had a chance to take a couple of weeks off post-legislative session, doing some stuff with my local church, and I thought during that period of time, you all would have everything in a public policy realm fixed. It turns out over the course of the last couple of weeks, it's not fixed yet, right? I got back and saw all the news. There is a lot going on in the world, and there is a lot going on that people of faith care about. So we're going to spend time today talking about issues that people of faith in Texas have deemed to be important, and we're going to consider why it is that we should engage in those issues and how you can be the most effective voice. And so we've done a series of these advocacy trainings throughout the state of Texas, and we're looking at doing a lot more over the course of the next few months. But we always like to start with Texans of Faith, considering why it is that we engage in this important work. And so we have a rock star team of panelists to get us started today. And I'm going to have them say hey in the microphone real quick so those listening by podcast know who's who. So first up, we have Rabbi Stephen Morgan from Congregation Beth Assured.
Hello.
We have Reverend Scott Moore with the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Hello.
We have Sana Shahid, Executive Director of Engage USA.
Thank you.
All right. And we have Reverend Cassandra Nunez from Barry Memorial United Methodist Church right here, Cassidy.
Hola.
Yeah. All right. And so, first of all, thank you all for being here this afternoon. We have asked this panel to help us consider why the issues the planning committee for this event talked about are important from a faith perspective. Just to give you an overview beforehand. We're going to be talking today about climate policy. We're going to be talking about disaster, which is disaster, not the entirety of public policy. We're going to be talking about immigration. We're going to be talking about health. And so I thought we'd go ahead and start out today talking about climate. I'm going to turn that piece of the conversation over to Rabbi Morgan to get started.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here today. What I wanted to say, I know I'm supposed to talk about the religious motivations of, I guess, my personal motivations for being involved in climate change issues. But let me just spend 1 minute on the political side of this, because I think this is important for advocates to consider. I did a sermon on this topic last October. It was right after Hurricane Michael. And it turned out that, for those of you who don't know, the Jewish people, we read the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, in sequence, beginning with Genesis and ending in Deuteronomy, and it begins in the fall. And so it happened that the October sermon that I was giving was right after we read the story of Noah and the flood, conveniently enough for Hurricane Michael. But I started my sermon talking about the political aspect, which is I cited a number of government sources which all talk about the disastrous consequences of climate change that will affect the world, including our country. And they were all from United States government sources, and I specifically quoted Republican sources. So that is to say that this should not be a partisan issue. It nevertheless is, but it shouldn't be. I quoted Chuck Hagel, who was a Republican senator and was the Secretary of Defense under Obama, but I also quoted a publication from the administration of George W. Bush, which he signed himself, as well as the current administration's own government assessments, whether they acknowledge them or not. All of these Republican sources say that climate change is going to be a disaster for the world, including this country, unless we start to do something about it. The reason the Defense Department and the National Security Administration is so concerned about it is because they need to plan for what's going to be reality in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And when they plan, they are taking into account the changes that are going to happen as a result of climate change. Now, as for the religious side of this, it was Parshat Noah, and of course that was about a flood. I also should mention I'm an Orthodox Jew. I'm conservative, so I don't have an Orthodox approach to how the world works. I believe that the forces of nature are scientific and operate according to scientific principles, and that therefore when floods happen, they're not a punishment from God, right? They happen because of the forces of nature. But our ancestors believed that the flood in Noah's time was a punishment. However, after that flood, God put up a rainbow, according to the Bible, and said he will not cause another flood again to destroy the world. What God did not promise was that he would not allow us to cause a flood ourselves. Moreover, in our tradition, when God created Adam and Eve, he told them to tend the garden, that is, to take care of the world. And that is the primary reason for why God created human beings in our religion, right, to take care of the planet. And if we don't take care of the planet, we're not doing one of the primary responsibilities God gave us to do. Now, I've done some interfaith work with Christians and with Muslims as well. I often, in the Jewish tradition, we actually talk about human beings as God's partners in helping to perfect the world, to make the world better. I get some pushback from Muslims because, rightly, they say, how can you be a partner with God? Right? Human beings can never be on the level of God, so how can you be God's partners? So I found other terminology that is more universally acceptable. First of all, you can say we are God's agents in helping to perfect the world. And thirdly, if you don't like agents, you can also say we are God's servants in helping to perfect the world. But however you want to look at it, the point is God put us in charge of taking care of the planet, and if we don't do it, it's going to get worse. It can be kind of overwhelming if you look at the studies and what they tell us the world is going to be like, because it's pretty devastating. But in my sermon, I pointed out that at the turn of the 20th century, scientists were afraid that that human beings were going to starve. And the reason there was going to be mass starvation was because they couldn't figure out how to take nitrogen out of the air and put it back into the ground. And unless they could do that, there would be no plant life. Without plant life, human beings would die. So they were terrified that the end of the world was going to happen really soon. And then a German scientist, his name was Fritz Haber, actually not a good guy if you Google him, but this one thing he did was to figure out how to take nitrogen out of the air and save the planet. So it is possible for us to do it. There are technologies available to prevent disastrous climate change. We just need to get the government to be truthful and not treat us like children. And we need to support government action as well as individual action in order to prevent what could be a disaster for the entire world.
So it seems like we should transition from that to disaster, I guess. And we're in Houston, Texas, right? My guess is that many people in this room have a personal story or know someone with a personal story about how climate can impact our own lives each and every day. We'll be talking during the public or during the Advocacy 101 piece about the importance of storytelling. But Scott, Reverend Moore, why don't you spend a second talking about the theology behind why we should care about disaster?
Thank you. Part of the disaster conversation from the faith perspective is an extension of what Rabbi Morgan was saying. I myself preached on the story of Noah last Sunday. When you read that story, the very first thing that Noah does when he gets off the ark with his family is to build an altar and to praise God. He doesn't get off and shake his fist at God and scream, why? And I figured that would be my reaction if I had just spent a year on a cruise ship drifting in the ocean with my in-laws. And that's Noah's circumstance, right? He's on there with his sons and his daughters-in-law. Been there for a year. It's not the 40 days that it rained, but another 10 and a half months after that. But the first thing that Noah does is to build an altar and to praise God. And in the religious world, the reason that we engage in disaster relief and disaster advocacy is to help provide a caring, faith-based presence in the aftermath of a disaster. To point people to hope and love and grace and mercy following some of the darkest times in their lives. I think as people of faith, we have to acknowledge the scientific evidence. The storms that we are facing due to climate change are getting stronger and more frequent, and there's scientific documentation to back that up. But working in the disaster realm really sits at the intersection of some of the basic tenets of most of our faiths, not just the Christian faith, but certainly the people of the Abrahamic faiths, sits at this intersection between care for creation and love of neighbor. And we're sitting here in Houston. If you go back and look historically, the Katy Prairie in the Houston area didn't used to flood like this when storms came in. The natural bayous and the natural vegetation absorbed the water, and the bayous were able to handle the rain and carry it out to the bay as God created. But as humankind had come in and altered creation and put up acres and acres and acres of parking lots and high-rise buildings and cut down just vast swaths of vegetation, creation can no longer function as God created it. And as people of faith, we need to be aware of that and need to be working to address those types of situations before the storm. Some of those creation care issues that historically we have not been real great at, to be honest with you, to help mitigate some of the circumstances before a major disaster. Once the disaster hits, they're going to come. As the rabbi said, God does not send storms to punish God's people. I tell people it's not like God sits up there and sticks God's great celestial finger in the ocean and swirls it around and pushes it towards some evil people. The right amount of heat mixed with the right amount of moisture, mixed with the right amount of swirling winds at the right time in the right place causes storms. It's going to happen. And when they do happen, and things have reached that level, our lack of care of creation has contributed to this, the faith community needs to be ready to step up and to help those people that are in their darkest hours. I hate talking about speaking for the voiceless or giving voice to the voiceless, because I believe that everybody has a voice, but I believe it's our job in the faith community to amplify the voices of those that are not being heard or not being heard loudly enough. And that's a large part of what we do during our disaster relief efforts. There is this element of pointing people back towards love and towards grace and towards mercy through our actions and helping them rebuild their houses. But there is also this part of it where we are working with them to help build them into the wholeness that God intended for them to be and bring them back into the whole creation that God intended. It's an interesting place to be, sitting at this intersection of so many of the basic tenets of our faiths. But it's also a very exciting place to be because we can actually be tangible messengers representing our faith traditions in the community. I speak a lot in my disaster trainings of the Missio Dei. And the phrase that I like to use is that the church doesn't have a mission. God has a mission and a church to carry it out. And so God's mission is to work in concert with all of creation, with all of humanity, to bring wholeness to all of creation. And the simple fact of it is, when we have a storm on the level of Harvey, nobody can handle it by themselves. It's not because they don't want to. You know, the U.S. government does not have the resources to come in and help 880,000 households along the Texas and Louisiana coast. They simply can't do it. Red Cross, you pick your favorite charity, nobody can do it alone. And the faith community has to be a partner with the government, with secular NGOs, with everybody involved as an act of loving our neighbor to bring everybody back into the wholeness, bring creation back into its fullness that God intended.
So one issue that has certainly been in the news over the course of the last couple of weeks is the immigration crisis. And I forgot to mention at the beginning in our series of announcements, Texas Impact has a program called Courts and Ports, where we send groups of from congregations or groups of people down to South Texas to serve as court monitors, but also just observe what's going on at the border. And I know a couple of people in here in the room have attended. A couple came up beforehand and talked to me about that experience. We'd like more information on that. Eric Nelson's our coordinator for that program. He's sitting in the back. But it's certainly one way to learn about what's happening. But Cassie, why is it that as people of faith we should care about the immigration crisis and what's happening?
So I have a little bit of an issue with this question of why should we care, right? This idea that it's not our problem, it's not right. As people of faith, we should care. Whether the issue is immigration or global warming or, disaster relief. When we are set to help others, we don't do it to get a pat in the back. As people of faith, that's not what we should be looking for. You should take care of people the way you take care of your family, the way you take care of yourself, the way you take care of your pets, if that's where your love is invested. You should care for people because they're human, not because they're immigrants, not because they're whatever it is that they're struggling with. First of all, I have DACA. That doesn't make me a resident. It doesn't allow me to vote. That does not give me any type of privilege but to work and to pay taxes. And then down the road, we'll see if I'll get anything back from retirement, because I'm not here with permission to be here. I'm basically turning in myself to immigration, and they're deciding to put a hold on my deportation. We'll see what we'll do with you, and with a lot more people. And then there's a bunch of other young folks who didn't even make it to DACA, who are going to college, and then what are they gonna do? They don't have a permit to work here. So why should you care? Because that is your brother, your sister, your sibling in Christ, or whatever faith you profess. I'm bilingual, so I have to do the translation. I think in Spanish and it comes out in English, so if it's backwards, you do the rest of the work. So I have been trying to convince people that I'm human all of my life. My childhood was taken away from me because I am trying constantly to convince people that I am a human being, that I have to do something extraordinary to deserve to stay in the United States, As my mere existence and my creation in the image of God is not enough. And as people of faith, we shouldn't allow that to happen. That is abuse. That is years of abuse in letting the media decide what value to put on people. To let the administration decide who deserves to stay and who doesn't. Because these talks of there being criminals in the waves of immigrants coming in, you know, people aren't born criminals. You know, the system has them pinned over and over again through life situations that they end up doing what they have to survive. Not that I'm saying that undocumented immigrants are criminals, but just because that's what is being publicized over and over again. So, I know I'm supposed to answer this question for you, but I hope that with what I've said, you answer it for yourself. Why should you care? I mean, why are you here? And why is this place not packed with people? Why is there not a lone light outside of faith believers wanting to change, to bring change, wanting to bring that welcome banner? And one last thing, the immigration quote-unquote crisis is not necessarily only in the borders. I deal with communities every day. And I'm in a church that it's an English language worshiping church. Yet I'm still taking care of people out there that aren't necessarily part of this faith community, who are struggling with all of this, who are hurting deeply, and who are afraid, cannot even go out to a grocery store because they think they're going to be picked up, cannot even go out to walk in a park because they're afraid to get picked up, who have to miss work, and they live paycheck by paycheck, trying to figure out how am I going to pay rent. Doesn't matter because I'm going to get picked up. So we should care, right? Yes. But not because of our situation, not because we're undocumented immigrants, not because my house was destroyed by heartbeat. We should care because we want to take care of our siblings in Christ or whatever faith.
And last but not least on this first round, healthcare policy has maybe not been in the news as much over the course of the last couple of years, maybe until the last couple of weeks because of court cases. Why should, I'm like asking a question, why should we care about health policy?
Assalamualaikum. Peace be upon all of you. Cassie, I just want to thank you for sharing your experience. It takes a lot of courage to share your story, and I appreciate you sharing that with us and still putting out service into the community. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I'm here to talk about why we should care about healthcare and about the role of health in Islam, my advocacy around it matters. If you've ever been to any Muslim household or if you've met a Muslim parent, almost all of them want their children to become doctors, my parents included. And my father's a doctor too, and I've talked to him multiple times about why that's the profession he chose to go down, and that is, it really does, and yes, doctors are, important members of society, but a lot of his motivation to follow that profession was from his religious understanding of service to others, and that's what almost all Abrahamic faiths are based on. That's the basic tenet, is how do we serve our community members, our people. And being in healthcare is one of the most noble and it's emotionally taxing work, but it's one of the most noble work that we can do to serve our community. And if you go to any major mosque too, you will find a free health clinic in the greater Houston area that I know of at least. And so health is something, the idea of health and the idea of our God, there's this concept of amana in our faith, which means we have been given something from God, which is our body. It is a gift and it is a blessing, and it's our job to take care of it. And so that's kind of where our motivation around health and our bodies and taking care of ourselves and taking care of others comes from. And so, yes, healthcare it's become a political issue when it really shouldn't be. And it's because it is human right, it shouldn't be something that's only given to citizens. It's only given to citizens with privilege of wealth or a certain class that you come from. It is a human right. And there's an idea of our religious identity and our political identity, and that's something that I contend with all the time, because my religious identity is also my political identity. Me being a Muslim American has been politicized. Even the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, was a religious leader, yes, but he was also a military genius. He was also a political leader. And our faith is political. Our identities as Muslim American is political. And so it's not enough to just sit back and say, oh, we should care about healthcare. I think it is important for us to get involved in advocacy. What are you doing to help get access to healthcare for everybody? Not just Muslim Americans, but everyone who is your neighbor, who is your brother or sister in your faith. And so I think advocacy as Muslim Americans, as people of faith, we have a lot of political power and leverage. And it is not just a privilege that we get to go out and speak to our members of Congress and to our legislators, but it is our duty and it is our right to advocate for those who are part of this community that we all share, and to give them the most basic human right, which is access to healthcare. And so I'm really glad that you are all out here and that you've committed to going out to meeting your members of Congress and to meet your legislators, because all change is local. And if you go to Austin, I've taken multiple day trips, and you take members of your congregation and you advocate for not just your community, but the broader Houston and Texan community to bring them give them access to the most basic human right. That says a lot about not just you, but your broader community as well. And so I urge all people of faith to go out and advocate for all of us. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I'd love everybody else's take on this, because I think all of our faiths would agree that we should help our neighbor, right? A lot of times we hear from faith leaders or people in congregations that means working in a food pantry or passing out rice and beans or something. But what advice would you have for people, for leaders in congregations, to say it's not just enough to do the charity work, we also need to do the important work of meeting with our elected officials and that kind of thing? What advice would you give to people in that situation? Anybody want to take that?
I think political work, political advocacy, like you just mentioned, is such an intrinsic part of our faiths, because that is the most basic form of service. Because if you want to have sustainable change that will actually impact and last way past us or our legislators' terms, if you want to get laws passed that will actually give equitable access to every single person in your community, the best way to create that change is to go to your legislators, is to go to your members of Congress. Because you can do food pantry work, you can do disaster relief work, and that's very reactionary. But to get ahead of those disasters and to make sure that we don't have a community or a society where people have to go to a food pantry but have access to food and have children who can actually afford school lunches anyway, is getting ahead of the game, getting ahead of the crisis, and making sure that we're not in a place where people are forced to go to food pantries, where people are forced to rely on FEMA for disaster relief. And we're trying to do that in the Muslim community, where we are trying to get all of our imams and religious leaders to talk about voter registration. We post voter registration at every major mosque in the greater Houston area. Voter registration is one of the first and most simple things that you can do to make sure that every single person from your community has access to voting, to make sure that the people who will represent all of us are in office, who have the power to pass legislation that will affect and impact all of us. Voter registration is important, going to advocate and talking to them, because once you see, I can speak for the Muslim community at least, we are 1% of the national population, and in Harris County and Fort Bend County, we are 3 and 4%, about 3 and 4% respectively. And so we're not a huge chunk of the population, but we have political power. We have leverage. And when they see us knocking on their doors every single day, they'll be like, oh, the Muslim community is engaged. These communities of faith are engaged. They care, they're paying attention, and they vote. So we have a lot of power. We just need to make sure that they can hear us so that they can represent every single one of us. That answered the question.
Perfect. Anybody else want to take that?
So, in my tradition, the way that our churches are set up, it is not a representative democracy necessarily, but people have no problem coming to their faith leaders and telling them how they ought to be running their churches.
I've heard rumors about that.
Yeah, it happens from time to time. But in America, this great experiment that is American representative democracy, it only works when the people participate in the process. And so for people of faith to have this idea that to be a faithful person means to somehow remove yourself from the political process, I think is missing the entire point of what it means for all of us, regardless of our faith, to live our faith in the public sphere. And it's missing the point of American representative democracy that can only work when people participate, and the faith voice absolutely needs to be heard with all the other voices that are out there.
Does it, I'm going to follow up that one, does it impact an elected official to hear from constituents?
Absolutely. It's been my experience with the elected officials that I have talked to. I certainly have not talked to every elected official. Does the president, some national level leader care what Scott Moore from Conroe has to say? Probably not. But does the representative from Texas District 8 care what somebody who lives in Texas District 8 has to say? Absolutely.
Or a school board member?
Or a school board.
Sure. And then I'll come back to it.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say, I hear what you're saying, and when it comes to, at least the communities that I work with, there are certain representatives that want to hear from us and are receptive. And then there are some that are just not. And this is where the idea, the concept of allyship really comes in handy, because if you see a community that is being ignored, that is being discriminated against, if you have a privilege where you can step up and speak up for them, that is every single one of our duty to speak up. I recognize that I come from a lot of privilege. And so if I can speak up for someone who doesn't have the same privileges I do, it is my right and my duty to do that. And so, yes, there are some representatives that want to hear from us and will open their doors for us. And I know I face that challenge where as soon as I tell them, hey, we're a political nonprofit that represents the Muslim community, they're like, oh yeah, we'll call you back. And I get the runaround. I've been getting the runaround from this one representative for 3 months now, but I have been consistent, so we'll see what happens with that. But in this instance, what would really help is if I have an ally step up for me and say, hey, I will go speak on your behalf. I will speak up for your community and the broader communities of the So I do think there's a lot of power in meeting your representatives over and over again and showing them that we're engaged, but also speaking up for those that they will not open the doors for.
Rabbi Morgan.
Yeah, so first of all, of course, we do have separation of church and state, so we would hopefully not want the government to take sides on a religious issue. On the other hand, certainly the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition, and I'm imagining maybe also the Muslim tradition, prophets routinely, their job was to speak out against government officials when they were misbehaving. And that's the role. I think, religions are hopefully informed by values that are timeless, and so it is our responsibility to speak up for those values. And I do think that it's very powerful to have our communities come together. Because if you get Christians, Jews, and Muslims together saying something, people will notice. And so if you can build these coalitions to stand behind something that we all think is very important, I think you have a much stronger case to make.
So I did apply to this DC once, and I came back super pumped. Like, yes, I'm gonna go visit and do all this stuff. And then they were off. But because I was trying to do it alone, I was like the only pumped one around me, and I was like trying to do this thing I've never done. I'm principally brown. I have an accent when I get really nervous. I don't know the political system. I'm still figuring all of that out. And so sometimes the way we can engage is not doing it alone, taking all that energy you will leave out of here with, and getting a couple of friends from your community of faith and saying, oh, I really want to go and like do advocacy under this, or join events that are put together by other nonprofits or other organizations who advocate. Being active and like looking up these places, these groups that you can join. I recently joined the LGBTQ caucus on doing some visiting, and I had no idea what I was doing, but I was there like cheering them on. And then they were like, well, Cassie, this is your district, you talk. And I was like, oh. And I just told my story, and that made all the entire difference. And so sometimes one can get a little discouraged of doing visits or calling, but when you do it in numbers, you get that strength back and that sort of pumpness, like, yeah, let's do this for the people type of thing. So that's another thing. You don't have to figure it all out by yourself, but do take this energy you leave out of this place with, out of this event with, get a couple of more friends, pump them up, tell them how great they are, and then you all go do visit or call banks or whatever it is, but you can organize this in your communities of faith. Or tell your pastor to like preach a little more on those social issues. I'm Methodist, so they come up to me and tell me how the church should be run too.
Sure.
I think it's important to remember on the advocacy, and Scott was trying real hard to cue me on this, and I didn't bite quick enough. The closer you get to the local level of government, the greater chance you have of affecting meaningful change. We're getting ready for August recesses, and we're focusing on our national elected leaders, on our senators and our U.S. representatives. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of people overlook the importance of local politics at the city, county, school board, mud district level, and how much opportunity you have to affect change there. And if you are one of 300 voters in a city council election, that carries a whole lot more weight when that city council person is seeing you at the grocery store every Saturday than if you're one of 300,000 votes in a congressional district. So don't overlook the importance of local advocacy as well.
So one of the things I love most about this job is I get to see you all from diverse backgrounds come together across the state to do this important advocacy work, like today. Right? Like we have people from a lot of different backgrounds, and Texas Impact's membership is very, very diverse. And so I do think it makes a difference when people from different backgrounds go make these visits together and say, hey, we're from a bunch of different backgrounds, but here's something that we come to consensus on. And that's important. We have just a couple minutes left in this panel, and so I'm going to do the Chuck Todd thing and tell y'all you'll have 30 seconds or so to answer this last question as we go down the line. We'll start this way and go this direction. But what do y'all hope folks in this room will do when they leave today? So what's your dream for what will come out of the conversations we'll have? Again, a reminder for those who haven't done legislative visits, we'll have a session later this afternoon where we talk about how to do that well. We'll get together in groups by congressional district and plan some visits. But what do you hope people will take from this experience today?
I hope that you would take time to get educated on your own tradition and spend an equal amount of time getting educated on other traditions as well. It makes it much more easy. You may be the one that needs to open up a conversation with the synagogue down the street, with the mosque around the corner, with the different Christian faith across town. So find out what other people believe. I know the social principles, what the conservative Jews believe versus the Orthodox tradition, things like that, and go open up those lines of communications, not just within the four walls of where you worship.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think also just to be motivated and to stick together, to persevere, put together a plan from how folks are elected representatives initiatives, but also determine things that we can do ourselves to help prepare ourselves on each of these issues. As consumers, what can we do with the choices we make of the kinds of things we buy? What temperature we set our thermostats at? What kind of cars we use? How often we fly? There's things that individually we can do, but then there's also petitioning the government to do things that only the government can do. And for that, we need to continue to meet together, group together, and strategize.
This is a really great question. Sorry. This is a really great question because I have a ton of requests for you guys. But I think the first
30 seconds.
I'll make them quick. I think one of the most important things is that you become an ally to communities that are not represented, and that don't have the same voice and platform privilege that a lot of us in this room do have. So please become an ally and advocate for communities that aren't able to do that. Also, there are 2 apps that I would like you guys to download. One is called Congress Reveal, where you can see all the bills and all the donors that your members of Congress and your legislators have. And then there's another one called Bill Tracker, so you can track all of the bills that are in session. And then also just please, like I said earlier, all change is local. Like they mentioned before, get involved in local politics. We have our city elections coming up right now, November 5th. So educate yourself on who's running for mayor, who's running for city council, and go vote because your voice really matters, especially in these local elections. And then I'll see you guys at the Capitol.
What they said. I would say you're all obviously allies, right? And you're here to do that allyship work. Thank you for that. But you also have friends who aren't really allies, right? But they're still your friends. And so just having these conversations around them and making them think really hard, because sometimes it's really hard to see somebody as your equal. It's always often that we look down on people who are in need instead of next to them. I would just say have those conversations with them. Of course, everything that was mentioned here is super important. Being active and knowing your representatives and all of that, and also knowing your faith tradition and knowing how it's actually important according to our faith tradition. But also be an ally further and talk to the people around you or have conversations with those people around you. I'm told microaggressions all day long, and so trying to ask, or why is the question really brought up? That's important too, and it helps heal me because I know that there's people next to me who care about me and my well-being. So.
Hey, thank you all so much for spending a portion of your Sunday afternoon with us. Really appreciate it, and appreciate the words of wisdom. So thank you. Real quick before we change it out, I was asked to remind people here in the room to make sure you sign in and pick up all of the materials in the back of the room. I think some of them will probably be referenced during this next panel. Remember to talk to Erica in the back if you're interested in courts and courts. For folks who are watching online, we're going to be doing a series of these interfaith advocacy trainings throughout the state of Texas. If you're interested in hosting one in your own community, please reach out to me at scott@texasimpact.org. We have somebody in the room who drove in for this event from Irving. Told her we'd be happy to do one in Irving as well. Probably should have said that an hour or 4 hours ago. So reach out to us if you're interested in hosting one in your own community. And we close out each podcast by saying, if you've made it this far in weekly witness programming, please make sure you support Texas Impact by becoming a member. So make sure your congregation is joined. You can do that online at texasimpact.org/join. But if you're in the room, Emma's in the back, and we'd love to take your membership information. Thank you all so much for tuning in for this portion. We're going to go ahead and cut this section for now, and if you give us about 1.5 to 2 minutes, enough time to make it in the back and pick up your handouts, we'll transition to the next panel. If y'all would say thank you one more time to this group.